e-commerce has never been easier to get into. There's a lot of tools out there that you can use to easily, build your own website. If you were starting an e-commerce website, define your value and then inform your product development. If you have an amazing product, stand by it, tell people, and really focus in on letting people see that your authenticity.
So, all right, welcome to another episode of eCommerce Australia. This week I'm joined by Joel Shaddock. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Joel for probably, I don't know how many, mate, about 7 or 8 years back in the 2XU days where you were sort of more graphic design and creative lead. But since then, mate, you've come ahead in leaps and bounds, working very closely in the e-commerce space with the Oodie and Threadheads, to name a couple of household brands. So thought I'd get you on and see if we can educate our audience on all things e-commerce. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Mate, looking forward to chatting to you more around your background and your experience. But I guess everyone knows the Oodie. So what was the experience like working there? When did you start? At what level were they doing? And where did they grow to in your time?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I joined the Oodie or Davy Group as its parent company week 3 or 4 of the pandemic.
Okay.
There was no opportunity there. There's just nothing. I've spoken to recruiters. There was just nothing. And I had an opportunity to join, and my role there was really around developing new e-commerce brands.
Yep.
So Davy Group had about 10 brands at its, I think it still has about 10 brands actually. And my role was really around strategically creating new brands that offered products to different product portfolios. So for example, one of those brands was called Swished, which was around summer lifestyle. One of those brands was called Zoetech, which is around holistic health solutions predominantly for women that didn't require medications. And what Davey was trying to do was really build a product portfolio that was supportive of each of those brands.
Yeah.
Where the Oodie came into that was the Oodie is the brand that we all know and love, but we really approached product development as a means of securing our future as a business, an e-commerce business. And that meant a lot of product research. It meant a lot of brand positioning, a lot of understanding, who is our customer going to be, and how can we talk to those people in a meaningful way and offer value. So it was a really interesting time. It was a very intense time as well because we were just gone through the pandemic.
Yeah.
No one knows what's going on. We're sitting at home. And we're trying to work from home, and we're trying to keep our jobs, and we're trying to be communicative and create work culture, and it was just very, very confusing. But Dave's leadership gave us all very, very, very succinct and very targeted focus areas, and my particular focus area in that business was new products, new brands, and new opportunities.
Okay. So let's touch on your role within that space. So new products going to market, or there might be people here listening that want to start an e-commerce business. How do you choose a product or a market? Do you sort of have an idea in mind and then go look at your competitors? Do you look at what you can source, what you can manufacture? Do you look at trending industries? How do you sort of choose what market is right?
That's an interesting thought there. So I refer to the concept of design thinking, which is to empathize with your audience, define what problem are you trying to fix, ideate how you can then fix that problem, create a prototype, and then test that. And it can be applied to every decision that you make. It doesn't matter if it's a product decision or an ad decision, but you can then go through that process and then re-employ that process once you have the information or once you have the understanding of its successfulness, and then reiterate. So we did that with we use one of our brands as an example. We might decide that we empathize a problem, we define how we're going to solve it, we ideate a product solution, we create a prototype, and then we'd test it and we'd validate that solution. And if it didn't prove to be successful, then we would find the next problem, the next cohort of people to empathize with, the next problem that they have, or the next solution that they need, and then we would go through that process again. And it's an ongoing process of improvement.
And how long would you give that each product? Would you test that for? Is it 12 months, or do you just test it really quick within 3 months, product fit, and then move on, or continue to sort of, I guess, make different versions of that product?
As quick as possible. So if we were to take a really top line look at somebody's problem, someone who needs a pair of socks, it's a problem that they have, but it is not worth very much to them. Whereas somebody who needs, let's say, fire insurance, as random as it comes, that has potentially really impactful repercussions, and therefore that problem is a lot more valuable to them. So, you have to really invest the relevant amount of time to deal with the context of your and empathize with your customer and their problems.
Yeah. And so how do you talk to those customers, or are you just kind of researching, reading what they're saying, or are you just trying to build like a bit of a persona or an avatar to speak to target?
So our real metric around successfulness of products in the e-commerce space was based on Facebook or meta advertising. So we talk about, we always talk about ROAS, we talk about all these like catchwords. We used MOAS, or margin on ad spend, so we could then understand if we were to launch this product after validating our ads, of course, if we were to launch this product, we can then factor in things like our customer acquisition cost. And we can factor in our average advertising cost, so that we would know that if we were to launch this product and go through our standard processes of lead generation, for example, we can make X dollars based on this product launch. So that gave us a lot of confidence to launch a new product, because we would be able to, within some level of assurity, guarantee that we would make this percentage GP.
Yeah.
Okay. And we know that advertising costs do fluctuate, but it was, it's really just about giving us confidence to make a decision whether we would launch this product or not.
Yeah. So margin on ad spend, are you talking about the actual margin that you make, taking away the cost of goods sold, shipping, everything like that, what you're left with versus the ad spend?
Yeah, so we consider the cost of goods, the customer acquisition costs, the dispatch costs, everything that goes into selling a product. We're reframing our view of Facebook advertising or PMAX advertising away from what revenue do we get from that particular campaign, and we're putting it onto the product itself and assessing the product viability.
Yeah. Okay. So knowing that you always have to sort of get more and more new customers, so that just goes in, and then you can actually get a much more accurate assessment of whether it's going to be profitable or not.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, interesting. And so does he use that across every product, every SKU, or is that more sort of brand by brand?
Well, it's product focused. So we took a very product focused view during the pandemic. We were looking for the next big product. So we look at the Oodie, for example. It's a household name in Australia. You look at Big W and Kmart and Cotton On and all those other big retailers, they have a wearable blanket, but everyone calls it the Oodie because it has the awareness. It has, it's an oversized hoodie. So it has that connection from a product sort of point of view. So what was at the time, at least, what was the next Oodie going to be? And part of my role was to find that and how do we bring that to market?
Yeah. And how did you go? What was the second performing brand within Davy Group?
Look, I don't think anything can compare to the Oodie just quietly. It
Probably
is, it
pretty harsh,
was,
isn't it?
yeah, it is correct. Like we moved from, it's a brand that moved from like 0 to 200 million in 3 years. It's just you would never see it in the next 10 years. It was the perfect um, product market fit for unfortunately the time that we went through, and I don't particularly think it's the most aspirational product out there, but I have four of them. So,
Right. Okay.
and I wear them daily because it's just comfy and warm and mate, it's great. So,
Yeah. 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 Nice. So, mate, we're talking about sort of starting and how to find different trends within the e-commerce business, more so around that e-commerce, area. If you were starting an e-com business, where would you? So, I guess you've sort of covered that a little bit, but where would you start? How would you sort of go to market? Would you look at the product first, samples, or would you sort of already be able to test the market somehow?
yeah, so it's worth noting. I think that e-commerce has never been easier to get into.
Yep.
Um, I'm a bit of the old crowd where, when I went through uni in the 2000s, we had to hard code everything. That's was Flash, and this is the future of the internet. It's obviously not the case. We've come so far. Um,
Yep.
so there's a lot of tools out there that you can use to easily, build your own website and build your own store, um, create a name for yourself. Shopify is perfect. You can get a templated site like done within a couple of hours. Um, that we can just I think we can just write that process off completely because it is so easy. Where I
Yep.
would start is defining your value, defining your company value, because um, the consumer right now has never been more skeptical. We've got data breaches. We've got, everybody's sending scam texts. There's all these different websites that are trying to take advantage. So everybody is hyper aware of people trying to take advantage. And all I could say is that if you were starting an e-commerce website, define your value and then form your product development. If you have an amazing product, stand by it, tell people, and really focus in on, um, really focus in on letting people see that your authenticity.
Yep.
And this is where the Oodie is very successful. So we look at like, we go back 5 years and it was all about acquiring new customers. The customer acquisition cost five years ago was what, $20? Now it's about $40. So that means that your new product that you're selling is going to cost you $40 just to acquire a new customer on average. Average. So if you acquire a customer, retain them. Talk to
Yep.
them, ask them for social proofing, build a community. If whatever you can do to turn your customer into an advocate means that they're going to tell their friends and family, the people that trust them the most, that your product is worth it, and you can mitigate all of the things, that risk that is associated with our financial times and the conflict and the scam calling and everything else, and direct them to you. And the Oodie does that very well. They have a Facebook group called Oodies Are Everywhere, and they offer them unique sort of opportunities to vote on different patterns or to acquire products early. They use it as data acquisition efforts. They build landing pages that are, a way of list building leads that are hyper interested in a particular launch. They do all these things to focus in on their target audience so that when they do sell, those people are more willing to listen and share. And they
Yeah.
tell everyone, they let people sell for them. If you've got an advocate, what better way to sell your product than let somebody else do it for you?
Yeah, perfect. And I think there's a whole heap to unpack there which
I know there is. Sorry.
I'll get back to. No, you're right. That's really insightful. But I think two things that stand out is trust and lead generation. So if we start with trust, what you're talking about then for e-commerce business owners is it, you know, Google reviews, Trustpilot reviews, product reviews, UGC, user-generated content, having as much of that on the website. Do you feel like that helps build that trust component? And then the authenticity side of things, it's, you know, it's probably really about sort of emails and text, but doing it in not just a transactional way, more educational and bring them along the journey. Is that a fair assessment of building out that trust and showing trust on your e-commerce website?
Yeah, I think social proofing is 100% the most important thing you can do. You can, if you put social proofing in your emails, use images. This is Joe Blogs. He loves the Oodie. He has 5 of them, or he loves my brand because of this. Here he is, and be honest and open. Ask his permission, obviously. Don't be like unethical about it. But this guy is helping you.
Yeah, one question I get a lot, I won't say pushback, but one question that a lot of e-commerce businesses that I work with through my consulting or my agency is that they suggest that people don't want to send photos back to them. They get the product, they may leave a review, but they find it hard to get photos and videos. How did the Oodie get those? How did you generate? Was there any sort of strategies in place, or what were some of the tactics maybe that you could help generate some more user-generated content? Was it just kind of using the hashtag and getting them from Instagram? Like, what was the sort of, was there any ways that you guys found that was quite effective in doing that?
Well, the first strategy is to ask.
Yeah.
If you're a small, medium enterprise, you're not looking at content at the same scale as somebody like the Oodie. So just ask, and you can use that for as long as they give you permission to. The second one is that, you know, you can run activations where, you know, submit your photos and you could win a prize, or provide some incentive for your community to engage with you. And the more momentum that you have with community building, the easier it will be to acquire that image content. You just have to remember that we're not here to sell a product. I mean, we are, but we're here to build something that is meaningful. And the more meaning that you, and the more value that you can provide that doesn't rely on discount, means that the more incentivized your audience will be to provide that value back to you. And a really good example is that I'm sure you can resonate with is, you know, brands like 2XU or Nike, where, you know, we're celebrating athletic performance, which is aspirational in its nature. So therefore, the customer base is going to be a lot more passionate. And we see that through different kind of events like Run Melbourne or, you know, New York Marathon, where they provide that value that is associated with good feelings and good memories and valuable challenges, for example. And therefore, we have immediately a heightened positive association with that brand.
Yeah.
And the result of that is we're more likely to give something back.
Yeah, and post images, or I guess depends on the demographics. Some maybe not if they're just starting out in fitness, but certainly the influencers and all that kind of thing are more inclined to post a few photos. The other thing that you touched on, which I think is a really good point, and we haven't really ever touched on that on this podcast, is around lead generation for e-com, right? So we're always talking about conversions and sales, but building your email lists, not sort of focusing so much on the transaction, but getting more, I guess you could call it top of the funnel, people who are sort of more interested but not ready to purchase yet, to drive lead generation, build that community, and then they will convert at some point later on down the track. So that's a really interesting point that, I'm not sure if you can expand on that, but in terms of, we talk about cost per acquisition, all those sort of rising costs, cost per click's rising. One way to kind of navigate that is to not chase a conversion, but to chase an email or some information to get them on board without actually chasing a purchase.
Yeah, I think the best thing we can do as businesses is to understand our customer. First and foremost, you don't have to have all the information, but we've never been in a better position to acquire that information. We've got all the Shopify metrics of those people who have purchased with us. We know, who they are and typically what gender they are and what they purchase. We know AOVs, there's so much information that we can gather, but it is 10 times more beneficial even just to make an assumption and validate it. We can make a persona that says that 30% of our customers fit into the persona of John. He's probably between 30 and 40. What are his motivations? What does he value? What is his problem, and how does our product solution actually solve that problem for him? And if we have that information, we can start to build a position around future products. We can start to build a position around how we communicate with this guy, and we can even start to understand how often we talk to this guy. How does our email strategy work for John?
Yeah.
Is he going to open our emails, or is he just going to swipe and delete it? And we just don't know, because we don't have any responsive information from that particular action that he's taken. How can we actually create an environment where he wants to take action and engage with us? So I think the first and foremost thing is that we need to understand who we're talking to, why we're talking to them, and how often we talk to them.
Fantastic. And that will also then help you start to create content, right, for your socials and for your email structure and even blogs and things like that. If you understand, as we say, we're going to call him John, if you understand who he is, then you can better help educate him to make an informed decision whether it comes time to purchase or whether in fact the purchase isn't right for him as well. So that's a really good point.
Yeah, and if you actually think about it in a sense of Facebook advertising or meta advertising, there's this concept here that we run our ads, we target John, and let's say it's really convoluted, but let's say we're selling a coffee cup, and we're saying this coffee cup holds X more coffee and it's better for John. If we don't know that John wants more coffee, that ad is pointless. But he might like the fact that the coffee is kept warmer for X minutes. So if we don't know who he is, how can we send him that ad? But secondly, if we're running those two ads and we're running them one by one and testing the results, we might find that for John, ad B is more effective. However, if we run those ads simultaneously, what we might find is that we're actually finding or discovering that John is not our right customer, and it might be Jane, who is a higher value customer because she resonates with, I want more coffee, but I also want it warmer. And the intersection of those two ads, if we run them simultaneously, we might discover that Jane is a higher value customer to us that provides more lifetime value and spends more money with us. So having that intersecting set of ads that are running simultaneously, it might lead us to making better decisions about who our customer is and how to talk to them down the line.
Yeah, 100%. I'll back Jane into to be a better e-commerce customer than John, but anyway, that might not be politically correct. So
cut it up however you like, dude.
Mate, in terms of running Facebook or meta ads, one of the questions I had for you, given your creative background and your sort of graphic design background, maybe this is a loaded question, but how important does a role in good creative play for your ads? I see a lot of clients, they come on board, and to be honest, a lot of them have quite safe ads and quite dull ads, and what I can see coming across even from the TikTok generation now is some of the best creative on TikTok that works well. They're flipping that across and running ads against that on the Meta platform. How important, in your opinion, is creative when it comes to success on Meta advertising across ecom?
So some of the best performing advertising that I've seen on Meta actually is just shot on the iPhone.
Yeah.
Because it has an element of authenticity, and it might be a UGC shot, or it might be, just something that feels really organic. It always outperforms something that has an element of branded or refinement to it. And as a designer, I probably shouldn't say this because it means that, I'm sort of devaluing my contribution. But the truth of the matter is that we as consumers want authenticity. I mentioned that, we've never been in a time where consumers are more skeptical. And understanding this means that we can, reduce our production value in order to connect more deeply. And for us, like if you understand that, is very, very powerful. Like running just old ads that are from 5 years ago, and if you look at them and go, this is a terrible ad, is if it has reviews associated with it, because once you cancel an ad, the reviews are gone. If you just keep running that ad and it has that momentum, it will continue to serve you well. But more importantly than that is that create a weekly testing regime. You say, I've got product A, I'm going to run 3 different angles or 3 different hooks. I'm going to test it for, say, $500 each, and whichever one is the best performing, run it. And then the next week, you take the best performing ad that you have, add 2 more of the same product, test them, and run it. And just go with whatever works, because whatever is the most effective for you in your brand and your context and your audience is completely unpredictable. We all come from different places, different cultures, different lenses, different experiences. We're all going to resonate with our brand or your brand and your product differently. So it is really just about creating that testing environment to optimize your spend as much as possible, because it's expensive.
Yeah, interesting. And I think too, that gets back to as you said, your initial point around trust. And I'm not saying you can, every ad should be an iPhone video, but if it's shot on the iPhone, then it's less polished. And I think subconsciously people believe less polished is more real and more genuine. So depending on your product, that could actually be quite a good strategy to deploy, is using slightly less polish, which is what people are used to on TikTok and Instagram Reels, maybe not so much. But I guess try those different creatives, try the polished, safe version, but also try something a little bit raw and edgy. And as you say, just keep testing them. But it's an interesting point you raise around, continuing to test weekly. You would suggest, what sort of ad budgets are you talking about there when you're sort of mentioning those $500? How much would they be spending a month on ads if they were testing that amount?
Oh, look, I wouldn't spend too much money on a test. A test just informs investment at a later date. So if you're testing a couple of ads a week, and then you run it for 2 days or 3 days, and you go, okay, this one seems to be the most promising. Let's invest in that one. Let's not waste money on the rest. So we're just trying to keep our risk down and mitigate that risk by building some kind of process that is defensive, to our spending habits. So it's really easy just to throw money at something and expect it to work. But the reality is that 5 years ago, pre-iOS updates, it might have been a different sort of story. But now the trend really is, the e-commerce gold really is retention.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that's a brilliant segue into my next question, is around where do you think the best ROI is at the moment? Obviously, we're going through an interesting time with interest rates and inflation, and although I don't like to read the news too much because it's too much negativity. There is I guess a realness to some of that. As e-commerce business owners, where do you feel the best return on investment and return on time is at the moment?
Look, it's retention.
Yeah.
TikTok is amazing. I do want to spend a minute to talk about TikTok. I'm not an expert on TikTok, but what I've discovered is that growth within organic engagement on TikTok is through the roof. Instagram and Facebook don't seem to be nearly as effective. However, I will acknowledge that the type of content that performs on TikTok requires a level of investment and understanding of the nuances of that channel. And I don't understand it personally because I'm an old fella, but
Old fella.
like if you can crack it, like crack it, right?
Yeah.
But with that said, the best return of an investment right now is retention, customer retention. If you're paying $40 to acquire a new customer and your product is, $50, you're losing money.
Yeah.
So all of the hard work that you have done to acquire that customer can be maximized by retention. It costs about $5 a customer to retain them on average. So why won't you retain them? At the end of the day, e-commerce never sleeps, which is great. That's why we love it. It's almost like an automated sales channel, but it is reflective of real life. And I think we forget that very often, in that it is, if you can replicate, the natural engagement process between two people and humanize your brand, you can be very, very successful with e-commerce.
Nice.
Email is a very good channel.
There we go.
Email is a very good channel to retain your customers. Automations and flows, in my opinion, is just a license to print money.
Yeah.
Email represents about 15% of revenue, and you don't have to do anything.
Yeah. And that's just through campaign automations in terms of buy cycle. Just different touch points throughout the journey.
Yeah, email automations, in my opinion, represent an extension of the shopping experience. They should be like frictionless. They represent an entry point into the sales funnel that may not have been there to begin with. So if you don't have email automations, you are essentially limiting your own opportunity. But we think about 15% of sales. It doesn't sound like very much, but we talk about like the Oodie that has $200 million in revenue per year. 15% of that, that's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And if that system is set up right and your segmentation is right, that is free money.
Yeah.
And it's free business value.
Do you include text with that as well?
Yeah, I would include text. SMS is very, very, very profitable too. But if we talk about like a new customer acquisition flow here, in that somebody signs up to your brand, that is your business card. It's your ability, it's your opportunity to turn around and say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is why you should be with me, or this is why you should shop with me. But then you take that as an extension of that business card. So this is where we use our advocacy. This is where we use our UGC and say, this is why people shop with me, and this is why they value me, and it gives you that second level of depth that we don't see when we, that second level of loyalty that we don't see with the majority of e-commerce businesses, because they don't understand that, we're trying to replicate a relationship between us and the customer that you would normally or more organically have in a shop or a retail store. That engagement with our store employees, it doesn't exist in e-com. So what can we do to recreate that level of safety and security? Email is king.
Yeah, and I guess that they've already opted in, so they've already, you can go through double opt-in processes and things like that, but they essentially have already opted in. They can opt out at any time that they want, and they've asked to hear from you. So a lot of brands that I speak to, one of the pushbacks they say initially is that they don't want to be emailing people all the time because they don't like being emailed all the time. But I think you'll probably agree, and you may have some context around the Oodie, but I think the more that you email, the more revenue it generates pretty simply. So you just got to get you just can't keep asking for conversions the whole time. But getting back to what you raised at the top, if you know your customer, you know your avatar, you know what John or Jane want, you know what interests them, then you can build some email flows around that and make sure that not everyone is such a transactional. Maybe it's more of a two-way conversation at that point.
Yeah, correct. You're 100% right. Is that they have opted in. They do want to hear what you have to say. They're open to being sold. That's what email is. But the truth of the matter is that our function as a business or a brand is to provide value. As long as you can provide value to that person, they're going to continue to want to hear what you have to say. And if you do it with consistency, you're setting the expectation, and you're following through on your promises, then the question of they don't want to hear from us or they don't want our emails is irrelevant, because you've set the expectation, they've agreed to the expectation, and so you deliver on that expectation. The other component of that, though, is that there is this really interesting concept, and I've had a few chats about it with some other industry professionals, is that there is this argument between, do we put our top performing content at the top of an email or do we put it at the bottom? And we know that the majority of important information should be in the first fold of the email, because 90% of people will click on that and they won't scroll. However, if we start to train our audience to that we're putting valuable information at the bottom of an email, can we then start to teach our consumers or teach our audience that it is worth their time to scroll and engage with our communications in a different way? I mean, it's catch-22, but it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, definitely interesting. There'll be some good tests you could run there for sure. One of the questions, I've got two more questions for you, mate. Selling like sales content versus education content, because we've sort of just kind of touched on that a little bit. How much should be salesy? How much should be education? Is there a perfect answer? What did the Oodie do around that? I mean, how much do you educate on an oversized hoodie? What's the sort of mix there look like from the Oodie and from your experience in general?
I think education is sales, just quietly.
Cool.
I think
I like it.
People don't want to be sold on something, and I also think that educating is providing context to the solution that you're offering them in a manner that they can then relate it to their problem. And that is sales. I think that the idea of sales as a means to move a product is not unethical, but out of date.
Yeah.
Because what we're trying to do here, again, is we're trying to provide value to people who are searching for that value, but they're trying to relate that product solution to their particular problem. So in the context of selling a product on e-commerce, I take a lot of guidance from 2XU, in that we have 3 different product solutions. We have the best, we have the middle, and we have the entry level. And the entry level product solution is great for those people that are, they want to get fit. They're not necessarily athletes, but they just want to get fit. And then we have that core middle ground solution that adheres to the masses, or the most people that are seeking out, a good pair of compression tights. And then we have that top level elite product that adheres to sports specific, running, training, ball sports, whatever it is the best of the best, and it's only going to be relatable to a certain percentage of the people. And educating our consumers on the benefits of those 3 different tiers allows them to make an informed choice. And when they receive that product or they receive that communication from us, they are more satisfied because they were able to make the choice themselves.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really insightful, mate. I think that should give a lot of e-commerce business owners a bit of a paradigm shift around that. Educate them and they'll buy because you're providing value rather than trying to get people to buy by quantity of emails. So that's brilliant. I love that answer. The last question I have for you is a bit of a prediction, so it's always a hard one, but maybe we can revisit it in 12 months' time and see how close you got. How do you see the next 12 months for e-commerce going? Any trends that we should be jumping on? Anything that you're sort of seeing now that you think will continue to evolve in the next 12 months?
Yeah, so I think it's no surprise, being a brand expert, retention. And a really good example is, value your customer, show them your value, and show them that you value them, and they will provide that value back to you. Customer lifetime value, CLV, everyone loves the catchwords and everything else, is really subjective. We measure it through metrics, but the truth is, if you can turn a customer into an advocate who is going to go out and tell their friends and family, their most trusted circle of people, how good you are or how much they love you, then that review, even if it's not online, will have infinitely more value to you, because it comes from somebody, or your new customers that come out of that will come from somebody that is meaningful to them.
Yeah.
So you've immediately already earned that trust, and you didn't do anything about it. You're just providing a really solid product solution, and a really solid customer experience, and it naturally just occurs. Same if you're going to like a brick and mortar store. The other one is that, be unique. Every e-commerce business has a set of USPs on the landing page. It says we're environmentally friendly with our processes or dispatch. You get free delivery over X amount of dollars, whatever it is. If everyone's doing the same thing, is it a USP? Are you considered unique? So the benefit of contrast here actually works in our favor. So look, we'll offer those things as a baseline because everyone else does, but how can we offer more value? Comes down to the value that you provide, the quality of service that you have, and the customer experience. Everything else is just noise.
Yeah.
And ads and social proofing and community and everything else are an extension of that.
Yeah. Yeah, brilliant. Mate, I've learned a lot today.
I hope so.
You're a star. No, I think it really resonated with me too, the lead generation as opposed to just going for conversion, but also something that I know to be true in my own experience is just trust and authenticity. And how do you build that? How do you show that on your website, on your Shopify or WordPress platforms or whatever that is? If you don't have any social proof or no testimonials, it makes it hard for brands to trust you. And I guess to your point, whereas we have as high as expectation as we ever have now online, that our credit cards, our security, our personal information is private. So anything that lacks a little bit of trust will really affect your conversion rate. So I think there's plenty to take away from that, mate. So I really appreciate you spending some time with us. I'll look forward to following your journey over the next 12 months, and perhaps we can catch up around this time again and see if some of the predictions come through, or see how you found the last 12 months and what we can do for e-commerce businesses going forward. Yeah,
it's good to chat. Hopefully we can do it again.
Legend. Thanks, mate.